Welcome to Brandstorm, the podcast that talks to the people behind America's brands. I'm Dan Trzynski, president of Platypus Advertising and Design.
And I'm Nancy Christopher, public relations director at Platypus. Our guest today is the competitions and marketing director for Erin Hills Golf Course. It was host to one of the biggest events in golf this past summer, the U.S. Open. Please welcome John Morrissett. How are you, John?
Good, Nancy. How are you?
I'm great. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been at Erin Hills now for 7 years. I started out exactly a year before we hosted the U.S. Amateur in 2011. My first year at Erin Hills was almost entirely devoted to preparations for the U.S. Amateur. And after that championship, between that and the U.S. Open this year, my role expanded to include marketing. So I overseen the couple of redesigns of our websites, our social media, our print advertising, our e-blasts, and media relations, and other things like that. And before that time, I had actually worked at the United States Golf Association and its Rules of Golf department for 17 years, so which gave me the background with the USGA and with golf, which has been very helpful.
Yeah, I bet that helped a lot. How did the U.S. Open come about?
The U.S. Open has been quite a story. It was a great time. It was the first U.S. Open ever in the state of Wisconsin, and it's something that early on the original owner, Bob Lang, was able to get the USGA's attention before even construction started for the golf course. There's just such a special piece of property, and the potential there was so great that even, like I said, before even a spoonful of dirt was moved, the USGA had seen pictures which encouraged them then to come out and look at property and imagine what could be, and they were intrigued from the very start and kept apprised. And even before the course opened, for a first in the USGA's history, Erin Hills was awarded a USGA championship, the 2008 U.S. Women's Amateur Public Links, in part because that championship was held in June, and which is also when the U.S. Open is held. So that was kind of the USGA's way of saying, well, let's see what Erin Hills is like in June. So a lot of interest from the very start.
I remember it being extremely hot. What did the USGA really like about Erin Hills?
Well, there are a lot of things. I mean, first and foremost, with the U.S. Open, the USGA looks at the golf course in terms of the quality of the design, the challenges it presents, the flexibility it has, other things that can set it apart from perhaps other venues, such as, in our case, our exposure to wind, that we have only 5 interior trees on the course. So it tends to be a breezy spot, which adds another aspect to the game that people don't see week in, week out. And in addition, we have an expansive piece of property. We have 652 acres, and the golf course occupies well less than half of that, which leaves a lot of room for the infrastructure that's so necessary for the Open, whether it's for parking, for hospitality, for the main spectator entrance with the merchandise tent, for the media center.
Huge.
Yeah, the merchandise tent. But believe it or not, that was 39,000 square feet.
Wow.
And you're right. When you're inside it, you feel like you're in a department store. You didn't feel like you were in a tent, did you?
Right.
Just amazing.
Yeah, I was amazed that when you talk about that infrastructure piece of it, I was there for 3 of the days of the tournament play, and getting in and out, it was just seamless. And my first impression was, we got a bus that was we were in the Oconomowoc, so what is that, probably 10, 12 miles away from the course is where we parked the car. I mean, it went off without a hitch. I mean, there was nobody, went through the line, went through security, got on the bus, got right to the door, and it was just an amazing fan experience of not sitting in traffic, not parking, and not having to deal with any of the hassles you'd think about going to a major stadium or that type of thing.
No, you're right, and that's great to hear that over the years, the USGA has found that, especially for general spectators, that having a couple of satellite parking lots really is the way to go, because that helps disperse the traffic around the course and actually from each parking spot, and it can really provide, as you said, a good experience. And they have so many buses that it's always a matter of buses waiting for fans rather than fans waiting for buses, that it should be fairly seamless.
I'm kind of interested in what kind of brand positioning, so, going about getting a major event like that, what kind of brand positioning did Erin Hills have to do? It was a relatively new golf course to attract the attention of the USGA.
Well, we're fortunate in that, and still part of our marketing and brand strategy is that, we tend to be on the understated side, and we want to let the course speak for itself. And that's one reason that we've really emphasized our photography over the years, that we're fortunate to have one of the best golf photographers in the business, Paul Hunley, who lives just over in Grafton, 45 minutes away. So he can regularly come take pictures, and we've really built up our photo library. And with our marketing, we tend to just present stunning photographs and let those speak for the course. And it's a little bit like how we approach the USGA, that early on, one of the three architects, Ron Whitten, who is also the architecture editor for Golf Digest magazine, had approached Mike Davis, who's now the USGA's executive director, but back then was their senior director of rules and competitions, showed him some photographs. He and the original owner showed Mike some photographs of the property where all they had done, it was such a great, wonderful piece of natural property that they just mowed out the corridors for the holes, and you could really see the holes take shape. And they showed Mike these pictures saying, look, we think we have something special here, won't you come visit? And Mike did. Before they moved any dirt, Mike was hooked. So the hard part, the challenge was really just getting people from the USGA on the property. Once they were on the property spoke for itself in terms of the character of the property, the quality of the design, and just the setting and the space went from there.
How much did the hosting of the U.S. Amateur and you mentioned the other women's tournament in 2008 play in getting that?
Well, all that was big. With the Women's Amateur Public Links, that was the USGA's early kind of nod to say, hey, this could be a U.S. Open course. Let's see what the course is like in June. Unfortunately, for those of us who have really good memory, will recall that June of 2008 saw some record rains and flooding in the area, which was not wasn't the best indicator that could be. But soon after that, or right around that time, the USGA awarded the U.S. Amateur there for 2011, and that was a real honor because that was the first time that championship was played in the state of Wisconsin, and that was a great opportunity to see how essentially tour-level players, certainly players who hit the ball as far and have similar games to tour players, can play that golf course. And, it was really invaluable to see how to set up the course then based on that for the U.S. Open.
Now, part of your role was to be the liaison to the USGA. What were your responsibilities in that respect?
It was a number of things. The main thing is, from the USGA's perspective, it was just very helpful to have in general, a single point of contact with Erin Hills, so that if they needed anything, they could go to this one person. While in many cases I couldn't do what they wanted, I could have it done. So whether it was something as simple as wanting to use our boardroom for a meeting, or getting a group of golf writers out on the golf course to play, or thoughts on communications with neighbors, things like that I was just kind of the go-between for that.
So hosting the U.S. Open is obviously a big boost to your brand. Have you seen any increase in the popularity? It was already a popular golf course, obviously, but since then, and how are you going to leverage that going forward?
The exposure we received from the U.S. Open was just tremendous. For example, Fox had over 40 hours of live coverage, and that you can't put a price tag on that.
No.
That's wonderful. But it is interesting that after the Open, it really has shown us that we cannot afford to be complacent. Even after all that great national and international attention, we learned a few things. For example, we learned in July and August that some people were not calling us to bake tee times because they just assumed we were completely booked. When in fact we did have some tee times. So we actually had to go on social media to say, contrary to some rumors, we do have a few tee times open here and there. And other things, we learned that even after all that exposure, that there are a few people who think that we're a private course, whereas in fact we're 100% public. So some people weren't calling us because they just assumed we were private and therefore they couldn't play. So that making sure people know that we offer overnight lodging. Naturally is not something that's played up in the U.S. Open previews and on the telecast, but something still for people to know. So we have identified a few spots where, even from just a basic educational perspective, we still need to be mindful of and shouldn't take anything for granted.
How many people can you lodge there?
Well, we have different configurations with single rooms, some suites, and then we have 5 4-bathroom cottages. And when you put it all together, it's 37 beds on property. So a 4-bedroom cottage could be, say, 4 guys from Chicago up for one night and 2 rounds of golf, or it could be 4 couples from the Twin Cities for a weekend. So a lot of flexibility there.
I read an article where Mike Davis, he's the executive director of the USGA, was very pleased about the entire event. The U.S. Open is booked through 2026, and I don't want to jinx anything, but what are the chances of it coming back?
Well, I think the USGA was very pleased with Erin Hills. Operationally, the support of the state of Wisconsin, the support of the fans, and the golf course. This was the first time they'd had the U.S. Open there. So, anytime you take U.S. Open to a new site, you don't quite know what you're going to get. And we were a little unfortunate in that whole spring and then that week were, as you probably recall, very wet, a lot of rain. And then it was, Nancy, you'd said how warm it was, and it was also a little bit unusually calm. So the course didn't quite play the way it was designed to be played. It was designed to play with fast and firm fairways and to be breezy. And that's why the fairways are on the generous side, take into account the constant wind. But if the wind's not there, then you have the best players in the world, and they did well. So we'd absolutely love to have another U.S. Open, and we really support and believe in the mission of the USGA and want to do whatever we can to help them. So fingers crossed that we'll see a second one.
Well, it was such great exposure for Milwaukee. I was in Iceland at the time, so while you all were experiencing 100-degree weather, it was about 50 degrees in Iceland. And I remember my husband and I poked in an Irish pub. It was called the Drunken Rabbit. I sound like the drunken rabbit. Anyway, we poked our head in there, and everybody was watching the U.S. Open. And I thought, oh, this is cool. I'm in Iceland, and I'm watching my hometown, Milwaukee. That's got to be wonderful for Erin Hills.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely mind-boggling when you think about the tens of millions of people around the world that watch this, that would, for example, be bombarded with images of Holy Hill. To think that you're in Iceland and you're seeing Holy Hill back home on television, it's almost surreal. It's so the exposure of that is great. And, I'm biased because I think we have a course that is aesthetically pleasing. It photographs well, and I think it came across well on television.
Oh, it really did. It was exciting. We were saying, oh, that's where we live, and so that started a lot of conversation around the bar.
Well, and one other thing that was so neat about the championship is you have the whole international golf world descend on Little Erin, Wisconsin for a week. So it's not just the players, but everyone around that, including about 1,000 members of the international golf media. And it wasn't just about Erin Hills, but really about Wisconsin, that you saw people talking about cheese curds and brats. And one thing that was so gratifying to see is on Golf Digest website, they had an article even, and the title of which was something along the lines of, if you thought Disney World is the nicest place in the world, try Erin, Wisconsin.
Oh, nice.
So it's nice to see something that three of us take, I hate to say take for granted, but we're accustomed to, just the genuine warmth and hospitality of the people here in Wisconsin. But it's so nice to see others appreciate that.
Was it, I'm curious, because you had all that media exposure, did you all ever check to see how many impressions were out there or how much media value you got?
Yeah, it was mind-boggling. It really was. I'm afraid I don't have numbers on the tip of my tongue, but in terms of website visits, social media visits, as well as just all the articles and other things written by others was amazing. And that's something that we hope for and we plan for. For example, on our website, we went to great lengths to make sure that it could handle the extra volume, that the security was sound, and things like that.
Are you targeting any other large golf events in the future?
Well, we'll have to see.
Besides, an Open.
Yeah, we remain really committed to amateur golf as well. So it's not just the U.S. Open. That, for example, earlier this month we hosted Marquette's intercollegiate tournament, and we've hosted the Wisconsin State Amateur. We hope to continue to do so every so often. Each spring, right before we open, we host the Lake Country Charity Invitational, which is this great high school tournament where the players actually go out and raise money for the MAC Fund. And
cool.
So and beyond that, we remain in talks with the USGA and are optimistic that we'll continue to host USGA championships, and not just at the level of the U.S. Open. That whatever we can do to help the game and help the USGA, would be delighted to.
Is there anything that you would change, or maybe you're already changing after the U.S. Open experience?
Well, it was interesting that we had known for 7 years that the U.S. Open was coming. So as you can imagine, that leaves a lot of room for planning and contingency planning. And inevitably, there are a few surprises. For example, a blimp falling out of the sky was something we didn't anticipate. But on the other hand, as, say, the Hartford Fire and Rescue Department would say, that was actually a straightforward incident for them to cover. But I think in general, the overall plan, the overall operation of the Open really went well and went smoothly. There were a few tweaks here and there we might make, but in terms of substantial changes, we don't think so.
Boy, that's nice.
Yeah, very nice.
There's an amazing amount of top-rated golf course, incredible public golf courses in the state of Wisconsin. Does that help your brand, or does that make it harder to distinguish your brand from other great golf courses? This is obviously with the Kohler properties. There's new things happening up in central Wisconsin.
Well, you're right. The explosion of golf in Wisconsin, starting with what Herb Kohler did with Black Wolf Run and then Whistling Straits back in the 90s, has been amazing. And Wisconsin has become what you could argue is the best summer golf destination in the country. And our position, we're strong believers in the saying that, rising tide raises all boats. And we think that, having more great golf courses in the state that are open to the public, like the new ones being built at Sand Valley, is only good, because it just gives avid golfers from all over the country and all over the world yet another reason to come to Wisconsin. And it's a pretty simple trip. Whether they fly into Chicago or Milwaukee, they can come for 3 days, they can come for 7 days. And we feel that our course has its own little niche among the great courses here in Wisconsin, and hopefully would be included on a lot of those itineraries.
Platypus has worked with a lot of tourist destinations, and I'm curious, what would your advice be to other destinations that are looking to attract some major events?
I think a lot of it would start with just an brutally honest self-assessment in terms of what are your strengths, what can you offer, and then go from there and then see what could be a good fit. Whether, that some courses, for example, might not have a lot of space for infrastructure. Some, if we're talking about golf courses, might not be able to be long enough to challenge the very best players in the world, but maybe they can challenge the best golfers in the state or in the region or in the country, and things like that. So first, think about what reasonably your venue can accommodate, and then once you identify some of those events, attend some of those events, see what's involved, and further and continue to think, okay, is this something we really could do and would be a good fit for us? And then if that's the case, then start talks with those with people with those organizations.
It's great advice.
I'm really excited because it's very cold outside and we get to talk about golf for a little while this morning. But by the time this airs, the 2017 season will obviously be closed. But if listeners want to play Erin Hills next year, what's the best way for them to book a tee time? What do they need to know before coming to the course? How can people make the most of their experience? Okay. Why don't you give us a little rundown of how that all works?
That we are taking tee times and lodging reservations for the 2018 season now. And the best way to do that is just by calling us, and we do have reservationists at the course Monday through Friday during the winter, 866-772-4769. And before coming, just think about, is there a specific date you want to play? Is there a certain time of the day you want to play? Do you want to spend the night? Do you have 4 players, 8 players, what have you? And, what kind of experience you're looking for. Keeping in mind that Erin Hills is a walking-only course, so do you want to carry your bag, or do you want to take one of our professional caddies, which can really add to the experience?
I would highly recommend the caddy experience. I've played, and that is just an amazing thing because your caddies, and the caddy that I had was also a caddy at Bay Hill, Arnold Palmer's course in Florida in the wintertime. So it's not just your normal local kid. These are professional caddies.
Well, that's nice to hear you say that, because we put a lot of effort into the hiring of our caddies and the selection as well as the training. That our caddies, we feel, do a lot more than just carry people's bags. That we know that they spend far more time with our guests than anyone else. They'll spend 5 hours or so with the guests, and that interaction plays a huge role in determining what kind of overall experience the guests have. So they know the course very, very well, and as you said, a lot of them are exceptional players. A lot of players who play on mini tours, and you'll see them in U.S. Open qualifiers and things like that.
Well, John, I want to really thank you again for coming here today and telling us all about your experience with the U.S. Open, and I wish you all the best. And I wanted you to know that we will also put the information that you shared with us about how to get in touch and do things in our show notes today.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Nancy and Dan. My pleasure being here.
It is holiday season. I noticed on your website this morning when I was just doing a little prep that you do sell gift cards. So anybody that's looking to buy Dan a gift for this holiday season, the website is in the show notes. So thank you very much, John. If you like what you've heard today, please don't forget to share, review, and subscribe to Brandstorm. This is Dan Trzynski along with Nancy Christopher at Platypus Advertising and Design, an awesome marketing company that works with a variety of regional, national, and even global brands. We hope you'll join us next week for another episode of Brandstorm.